Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds NFL Week 10 preview show. I am Geoff Mosher, and if Week 10 is going to be anything like the Thursday night game between the Bengals and the Ravens, well, buckle up because that was a great game. Although I'll say there are some not so great games on the Week 10 schedule, but that was a great game. Bengals, once again, show you they always play their best against the Ravens, and they always bring it, but they cannot seal the deal, which has kind of been the Bengals' motif this year. They've just not been able to get over the hump. They've got a bunch of one-score losses or one-possession losses, starting with Week 1 at New England, then the Chiefs, then the loss to the Commanders. They started off 0-3 and lost those three games by a combined, I think, 13 points. So, as you see, the Bengals are a type of team. They're 4-6, and amazingly, in the AFC, they're still in it for a wild card. We'll get to that a little later. So you can't really give up hope for them. They're playing decently. They lose a lot of one possession games. They're getting unbelievable play from their quarterback, Joe Burrow, and of course, Jamar Chase. But after that, just not enough contributions from a lot of other people. And listen, the Bengals had that game. They were up by two scores, 21-7, and then Chase Brown fumbles. And Chase Brown's played nicely in year two. He's going to be a good player. He had a decent game overall, but losing that fumble and then watching the Ravens go right down the field immediately, score a touchdown, was a blown opportunity for the Bengals to be able to put that game away when they had a chance. If they go up 28-7, if they go up 24-7, you put a lot of pressure on the Ravens, who can score. They can score now, so it's not like the game was over, but obviously the Bengals can score too. And the way that Burrow was connecting with Jamar Chase, you would have liked their odds to finish that one out. They fumble. Instead, the Ravens score a touchdown, and then obviously it becomes a neck and neck game and a lot of scoring. And look, I think Zach Taylor did the right thing. They get the touchdown at the end of the game. They decide they don't want to tie the game down one. They want to win it right there. And that is the right decision to me because your defense isn't stopping the Baltimore Ravens in overtime. They're just not. If they get the ball, we saw that with the Tampa Bay Bucks against the Kansas City Chiefs in the Monday night game. If you got a chance to go for it, you're moving the ball well, you get the matchup that you want, you go for it there when you have that defense that the Bengals have. So I don't blame Zach Taylor. I didn't mind the play call. You're trying to get the ball to Chase first. They call a timeout. They do a little bit things differently coverage-wise, and you've got two real quick routes. Chase is farthest from the ball, and it draws the coverage, and it gives you one-on-ones, which they had. They had Gesicki one-on-one. They had the other tight end that Burrow threw it to one-on-one, and they got mugged, honestly. Both guys got mugged, and there's a legitimate – you heard Al Michaels say it. There is a legitimate argument to be made that the ref should have thrown the flag there. I don't want to hear this. You don't throw the flag in that scenario. I mean, Gesicki himself got mugged twice on that play. A tight end who dropped the ball or didn't catch the ball got hit on the play. But unfortunately, that's how it breaks when you're the Bengals and you're not a very good team, and you have trouble closing out games. And that's it. The Ravens win again, and the Ravens are part of what I would call a very small, as we now are, into week 10 and more football has been played than will be played in the regular season. You're starting to see the upper class here of the NFL form. To me, there's a very small upper class in the NFL. That's the Chiefs. That's the Lions. And if you want to throw the Ravens and Bills in there, I'm not going to argue it with you. Those to me are the four best teams in the NFL. After that, you only have a couple of teams that you would call the upper middle class. That would be the Eagles. That would be the Texans, even though they're struggling. That would be the Vikings. That would be the Packers. Okay? That would be the Commanders. That's your upper middle class. And then after that, you may have a couple of teams like the Bengals, who, despite their record and only being 4-6, they're still in it. The Colts, 4-5, still in it, kind of hanging out there. And then the rest, I'm sorry, the rest is just not very good. Yeah, Tampa Bay, in that sort of lower middle class too, 4 and 5. They're involved in a really brutally tough part of their schedule. They're missing guys with injuries. Tampa Bay, you think that when they get Mike Evans back and their schedule lightens up, they can win some games. But listen, if you need your schedule to be a cupcake schedule to win some games, that shows you're probably not that good to begin with. But I'll put the Bucks in that middle class. I didn't mention the Falcons. I would put them in that sort of upper middle class as well for now. But basically, then everybody else is just bad, and the AFC has a lot of bad teams. I mean, a lot of 2-win teams: Cleveland, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Vegas. I mean, and then the NFC is better top to bottom, no doubt. They don't have an undefeated team like the Chiefs, but and they have their share of bad teams too, like New Orleans and Carolina and the Giants. But when you look at right now, who's vying for the seventh seed? All right, the last and final seed in the NFC. I mean, we're talking about like the Packers. The Packers right now are at 6-3, are the seventh seed. That's how good the NFC North is with Detroit and Minnesota in it. Okay, you look at the AFC right now. Denver is the seventh seed at 5-4. The Chargers, who haven't beaten anybody, are the sixth seed, which is a reason why if you're the eighth seed right now, Indianapolis Colts at 4-5, the ninth seeded Bengals 4-6, and even the 10th seeded Jets at 3-6 are not out of it. And these teams, for the most part, have either been disappointing or just leave a lot to be desired. Of those three teams, I can see the Bengals making a little bit of a run because I think Burrow is playing at an extraordinarily high level. You can't put the game on. You can't put last night's game. On Burrow because he was pretty darn good and he's a great quarterback. Now they had a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1 in the second half that they went for it on, and both times Burrow took a deep shot down the field. He went deep to Chase, left side, didn't connect. Saw cover one, figured he had a shot. I mean, the guy's been connecting with Jamar Chase all night, so I have a hard time knocking him for trying to get it to Chase there. What did Chase have? 11 catches for 264 yards. But on the 4th down, they went for another kill shot, which to me was a questionable decision on Joe Burrow's part. You're throwing the ball to Burton, the rookie, who, we saw what he went through the week before, and it doesn't connect. And then you give the ball right there to the Bengals, who, to the Ravens, who you haven't stopped. You're not stopping them. And of course, the Ravens go and score, and it becomes a neck and neck game. That was a questionable decision there. But in general, Joe Burrow, 428 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Watching him and Chase play, and then I guess it's sort of like the Michael Vick Vikings teams the Michael Vick Falcons teams from the mid 2000s, where you would see a highlight and you would see that Vic would run for 2 touchdowns, pass for 2 touchdowns, and they'd win, 28-25, or they'd lose 30-28, and nobody else did anything. It was just the Michael Vick show, and that's what the Bengals feel like right now. There was a time that their defense was pretty decent a couple of years ago. That's what got them to the Super Bowl along with Burrow, but right now it's just Burrow and Chase, and pray you win the race. Pray you outscore the other team, and they could not outscore the Ravens. All right, so let's get to the 1 o'clock games. We go to Germany, and the poor German crowd has to witness the Giants play the Panthers. These are 2-7 teams, and all I can think about is who cares? Who cares about this game? I mean, these are 2 really bad teams. I know the Panthers are coming off a win. They're sticking with Bryce Young for now. It'll be his 3rd start. He's coming off his first comeback win. They beat the Saints, who are another awful team. They're going to, I believe, have Jonathan Brooks, their rookie running back, available for the first time. He's coming off that knee injury he had in college, coming out of Texas. He's an impressive running back. There are big expectations. So naturally, what do the Panthers do? They give their other running back, Chuba Hubbard, a huge contract extension this past week. So the Panthers continue to do things that make me scratch my head. But they will play a Giants team that's coming off a 27-22 loss to the Commanders. The Giants are 2-7. Their season's over. They are in almost every game they play, and then they find a way to lose that game. They commit bad penalties. They can't get the ball to their best players when they need to. Their defense breaks down in critical moments. The Giants are just eyesore. And if they lose to the Panthers in Germany, which is very possible, I mean, these teams both stink, but I think you would say that there's more talent on the side of the Giants. If they lose this game, shame on them, but it's very possible that they do. Patriots are at the Bears. Now the Bears need to get their season back on track. They're coming off two straight losses. They're 4-4, and they're in it there in the NFC North, despite the fact that they have the Lions and the Vikings. When I say in it, I mean they're competitive, but they got to get back to winning games if they want to make and get a wild card berth. They lost the Hail Mary game 2 weeks ago against Washington. I said last week, let's see how they respond. Will they go and lay a complete egg against the Cardinals? They lose 29-9. Their defense falters. Caleb Williams has another bad game. They had him playing better. They had him playing within himself. They had the run game going. Had the defense going. They need to get back to that. And it's good for them that they play the Patriots, who are also another terrible 2-7 team, coming off a loss to the Titans, 20-17. They have no offense. Their defense is blah. This is a game that you're home. You're the Bears. You've got to rebound. You've got to get back to your formula of running the ball well, of having Caleb Williams play within himself. Get the ball to Rome Odunze. I think that would be probably a good idea, and play some better defense. I know they've been banged up a little bit on defense, but this Patriots team, if the Patriots come in, and Drake May's done some decent things. I know nobody's watching the Patriots play. I'm not watching them week after week. I'm seeing how they do. Sometimes I'm catching some replays on TV. Drake May's done some decent things, but if you're the Bears, you can't let Drake May come in here and beat you when you've lost two straight and you're trying to get back in. You just can't. Bills are at the Colts. Bills are 4-point favorites at the Colts. By the way, I forgot to mention the Bears are 6-point favorites in that game. And in Germany, the Giants are 6-point favorites over the Panthers. Bills 4-point favorites. They're in Indianapolis. The Bills are riding high. 4 straight wins. Beat Miami, which I know Miami's not very good, but Tua is back. They're scoring more points, and it's a big AFC East game for the Bills twice a year. So to win that game is good. So they win 30-27. They're 7-2. They look like they can hurt you in a lot of different ways. Josh Allen only has 2 interceptions this year. I mean, who would have thought? If I would have told you Josh Allen is only going to have 2 interceptions this late into the season, you'd probably say, well, I would expect that the Bills are going to be a pretty good team then. Well, they are. they're playing really well. So you got to look at them as a serious contender. I don't like what I've seen from the Colts, who are now 4-5. They've lost 2 straight games. I've been saying it all along. The pressure to go to Flacco just to be a wild card team, maybe if you could take advantage of the Texans and their issues and win the division, the pressure to do all that, as opposed to trying to develop Anthony Richardson, was going to do them in. And I've been saying it week after week. You wonder if they can hold off, and they couldn't. And they gone to Flacco, who's had, I think, one good game or one good appearance for them this year, but has not looked very good so far as the starter. Now, granted, they had to play the Vikings, and the Vikings have a very good defense, and Flores can cause a whole lot of issues with what he does as the defensive coordinator. And the week before, they had to play the Texans, who also have a good defense. And listen, they haven't had Pittman. Pittman's not going to play this week. So I get that there are reasons why the Colts don't look very good. They're not running the ball very well with Flacco as quarterback, as opposed to running the ball with Anthony Richardson. But I don't know if they made the right decision. I get it. It's really hard to watch a young quarterback play as poorly as Anthony Richardson has played. But the long-term vision for the Colts cannot be Joe Flacco. And it can't be let's draft a quarterback next year either in the first round. It's got to be about developing Anthony Richardson. So I don't know what's going to happen. If they lose this game 4-6, maybe they go back to Anthony. I just think that in the league, there's just too much pressure for coaches and GMs to have to win the games, even when they're trying to develop quarterbacks. And that's exactly what happened to the Colts here. And I don't like this matchup for them against the Bills, even though they're at home. Broncos and Chiefs. The Broncos got a little taste of the humble pie last week. They did. They were doing well. People were starting to talk about their defense. I was starting to talk about their defense. So also starting to make mention that the Broncos were starting to play better offensively. 33 points against the Saints, 28 points against the Panthers. You shouldn't really be applauded for scoring points against the Saints and Panthers. But the Broncos are on Bo Nix, and everything about them is still a work in progress offensively while they have a very good defense. But then they had to play the Ravens. And now you see the resume. When the Broncos have to play a team, okay, a team that's got some salt to it, they don't stack up. They lose 41-10 to the Ravens. 3 weeks before that, they had to play the Chargers. They lost 23-16. A couple weeks before that, yes, they did beat the Buccaneers 26-7 at a time that the Bucs were playing well. It's probably their signature win, but they lost to the Steelers 13-6, lost to the Seahawks 26-20. So their wins, again, I'm not taking any credit away from their win against the Tampa Bay Bucs in Tampa. That was a great win for them. It was a little freaky of a game. I think Nix was the leading rusher in that game. But their other wins are 10-9 over the Jets at a time in which the Jets were miserable. Not that the Jets are much better. 34-18 win over the Raiders, who are just awful. And their other wins are the Saints and the Panthers. I mean, the Broncos have a very good defense, but when they got to play a team, and now they got to play the Chiefs, it's a different story. And that's why they are 8.5-point dogs in Kansas City. Now, I keep saying the deeper you get into the season, the harder it is to stay undefeated. And the more vulnerable you are to just stubbing your toe, getting tripped up. And, now you got to play an AFC West divisional rival, right? You got to play the Broncos. You're 8-0. There's pressure on you. DeAndre Hopkins, I guess for a week, I misread the situation a week or two because I didn't think Hopkins at his age and with what he's shown was going to be that much of a boost to Kansas City offense. He clearly is. He clearly was. It wasn't just schemed open passes. I mean, the longest pass catch that he made was a beautiful catch on a perfectly placed throw between two defenders by Mahomes, where Hopkins had to sort of reach up behind him and grab an over the shoulder in between two guys. And that's what DeAndre Hopkins has done well his entire career. And I was wrong thinking he might not be that big of an upgrade for the Chiefs. He will be. He has been, at least so far. And you have to like the Chiefs' chances right now of beating the Broncos. Maybe they don't cover, but 8.5's a number, but we'll see. And then they got the Bills up next. If the Chiefs beat the Broncos and the Bills and get to 10-0, look at their schedule: Panthers, then Raiders. So it looks like they'd be good shot to be 12-0. And then you're going to start once you get to Thanksgiving and you're undefeated is when the Miami Dolphins team, the perfect team from 72, starts to make some noise and they get all agitated and they start showing up at the sidelines of games and flexing their muscle, and you start to hear from Mercury Morris and things like that. So we'll see what happens. They got to get through the Broncos and Bills in this stretch first to get to 10-0. If they get to 10-0, 12-0 is very realistic. Then they'll have to play the Chargers December 8th. I believe that's a Sunday night game. It's 8:25. That'll be an interesting game. And then after that, Browns, then Texans and Steelers, and then finishing out with the Broncos. I don't think they're going to go undefeated. I shouldn't put anything past them, but I don't think they're going to make it through the schedule undefeated. I think the Dolphins will be all right. Let's go to the next game. That would be the Falcons at the Saints. The Falcons are a pretty good team. They're 6-3. They've got back-to-back wins now, and they've taken advantage of the opponent's injuries. Okay, we've talked a little bit about that some with the Eagles, where you're really looking for a real test for the Falcons. They beat Tampa Bay, but we know Tampa Bay was all beat up on offense. They just beat Dallas last week. We know that Dallas is A, not very good, and B, has had every injury under the sun. But hey, they're 6-3, and they have capitalized on the fact that Tampa has played a brutal, tough of their schedule, and Tampa has not done well. In that, I think they've lost 3 straight games, and they're 4-5. So they've got a 2-game lead here over the Bucs, who I believe they've beaten twice in the NFC South. So they're in the driver's seat. The Falcons are in the catbird seat for the NFC South. It would take a pretty disappointing, lapse for the Falcons here in the second half to probably blow that. So they're looking pretty good. And now, if you're the Falcons and you've already beaten the Eagles right? You want to stack wins and try to get this number 2 seed. Now, maybe there's a shot you can get the number 1 seed if the Lions stumble, but at very least, you're trying to win this NFC South and get the number 2 seed. So you can't lose to the 2-7 Saints. I get it. It's in at the Superdome, and I do expect a little bit of a galvanizing impact for the Saints because they fired Dennis Allen after losing to the Panthers, and they promoted Darren Rizzi as their interim head coach. If you don't know who Darren Rizzi is, he's a special teams coordinator. He's a very, very well-respected coach and coordinator around the NFL. The players love him. Yeah, they already got the Riz shirts going. You know, all the teenagers around the world are making Riz jokes right now about Darren Rizzi. It could be a boost for them to get just a fresh set of eyes and a real likable figure. Not that they didn't like Dennis Allen, but I think by how they've played over the last few weeks, especially defensively, you could tell that the Saints knew that their season had gone down the rails and there was no bringing it back. So a popular figure like Darren Rizzi could give them a little bit of a boost, but they've lost 7 straight games, and they're not very good. And the Falcons right now have to sense the chum in the water. They have to be like sharks here and beat the Saints. If they lose this game, I think I mean, the Falcons lost a couple weeks ago at home to the Seahawks, and they got embarrassed. And you wonder, what's up with the Falcons? Are they this kind of team that's going to be generally good but have a awful slip up every 2 or 3 weeks? Well, we'll see. We'll see in this Saints game. They really should win it. 49ers at Bucks. Now, the 49ers, as I have said since the week 1 preview, I felt that the 49ers were going to have a rough start to this year. They weren't as deep. They were dealing with the CMC injury all throughout training camp. Their defense wasn't the same. And so far, proved to be right. They're 4-4. They've been doing this win-loss, win-loss, win thing for the last 5 weeks. They're not consistent at all. But they are coming out of the bye. They are getting McCaffrey back. I think that's going to be enormous for their offense, especially after losing Brandon Ayuk a few weeks ago for the season. I think this is the time when the 49ers will start to hit their stride and become the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if they're going to be blowing teams out by 20 points like the last year 49ers week after week after week, but they're at Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay needs to win badly. This will be an interesting game, but I expect McCaffrey to give them a jolt offensively, and it wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers coming out of the bye had a fresh set of legs, fresh set of eyes, maybe got a little healthier all around, not just McCaffrey, and started to reel off some victories here. Starting with Tampa Bay this weekend, then you got to play Seattle, a division game at home. You already beat Seattle once in Seattle. That was a big win. All right. Then you'll have the Packers the week after that. That'll be a big game. Then the Bills. So it's not easy. You got Packers, Bills, Bears after Tampa Bay and Seattle here. And then you finish up Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals. So there's some winnable games. There's some losable games in there, but it just would not surprise me at all if the 49ers sort of start to make their march. And if they start to make that march this weekend in Tampa against the Bucks, who are they're in a really tough stretch of their schedule. They've lost a bunch of games in a row, but look who they've had to play. They've had to play the Chiefs. They've had to play the Ravens, right? That's where it started. They lost to the Ravens, they lost to the Falcons, then they lost at Kansas City, and now they got to play the 49ers. That is brutal. So if they lose, they'll go to 4-5. I'm sorry, 4-6, but they'll go into the bye. Excuse me. They'll come out. They'll have the Giants, Panthers, Raiders 3 straight weeks. So they'll have a chance to get right coming out of the bye. But until Mike Evans comes back and they start playing a little bit better defense, it's going to be some tough sledding for them. Steelers at Commanders. The Steelers are 3-point underdogs in Washington, despite being 6-2, despite winning 3 straight games, galvanized by their switch to Russell Wilson, and despite technically they are leading the AFC North over Baltimore. Yet they go into Washington as 3-point dogs. Mike Tomlin will use that as motivation. The Steelers will see that as motivation. They're getting healthier in some spots, especially on the offensive line. So that's exactly where the Steelers need to be. They need to be a good running team. They need to limit Russell Wilson's throws and just have him try to moonball to Pickens whenever they can. They obviously got Mike Williams, so that was a nice addition to their offense. It gives Russ another guy that he can moonball to, and Mike Williams, when healthy, can go get it. It's a fresh start for Mike Williams, who clearly wanted out of New York and had that falling out with Aaron Rodgers there. But look, they go into Washington. Washington's also won three straight. They can beat you in a variety of different ways. They beat you on a Hail Mary, and then they keep winning. They're a tough team right now, and you got to give them a lot of credit because they've been under the sort of the spotlight now, and they keep winning. They beat the Giants 27-22. So I said last week, sometimes you win a game on a Hail Mary and there's a lot of emotion involved and it's hard to kind of take that into the next week's game. Well, the next week's game was a division game for them. It was the Giants, and they beat the Giants again for the second straight time, 27-22. They trade for Marshawn Lattimore. We'll see if a healthy Lattimore can make a difference on that defense. Sanders still will go to the nickel spot. It's a good move for them if Lattimore stays healthy and plays well. And this should be a great game. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't flexed, a week or two ago into the night game. Not that the night game is bad this week, but at least into the 425 spot. But it is, of course, Eagles-Cowboys 425, so you understand that as well. Should be a good game. Could be anybody's game to win. Vikings at Jaguars, finishing off the 1 o'clock games. Now, the Vikings defense looked a lot better last week after a little bit of a rough stretch. The Vikings had lost two in a row. They beat the Colts 21-13. They are 6-2. They're trying to keep pace with the Lions. They're trying to keep pace with the Packers. They're trying to win the NFC North, try to get themselves a 1 or a 2 seed in the NFC. And honestly, they should have a field day in Jacksonville. I'm surprised they're only 4-point favorites, as Jacksonville will be starting Mac Jones at quarterback. I mean, this is already a bad Jags team. They're 2-7. I get it that they put up a fight. I wouldn't quite say that their game against the Eagles last week was example of them putting up a great fight. They frankly should have gotten their ass kicked because statistically they did. They only got 200 yards of offense, and that's with Trevor Lawrence. Now you're on Mac Jones. They gave up over 400 yards on defense. It just happened to be that they forced a turnover and were able to get a touchdown out of it. The Vikings defense, I think, is going to pose a lot of problems for Mac Jones. So I get that this is in Jacksonville. I get that the Jags have scored more points lately and have been tougher. They gave the Packers a game a couple weeks ago, but now we got Mac Jones a quarterback, and every week that the Jags lose, they just fall further and further out of it, and questions about Doug Peterson's job and this and that. And now you got to play a Minnesota Vikings team that is coming in here trying to win every single game that it considers winnable as easily as they can. And Brian Flores is going to be coming after Mac Jones. 4 o'clock game, I mentioned the Eagles-Cowboys. Everybody knows that the Eagles have not won in Dallas since 2017. Of course, Cooper Rush will be playing for the Cowboys, so that changes it. The Cowboys sort of like the Jaguars, not very good, not nearly as bad of a team, but now on your backup quarterback. The Cowboys haven't stopped the run all year. They haven't really stopped the pass. They haven't run the ball themselves. Their offensive line hasn't played well. So the only thing they got going for them really is that Micah Parsons will be back. Trayvon Diggs is back. So I don't know if that's going to be enough. I think the Eagles have a chance to win this game pretty convincingly. Obviously, the odd makers do too. They're making the Eagles 7.5-point road favorites in an NFC East game. Everyone knows that while this game is important for the Eagles because it's Dallas week, this is really a big week for the Eagles because they will have to turn around 4 days later and play the Commanders at home in what will be a very, very important game for both of those teams. So yeah, I think it's good that the Eagles are playing the Cowboys because they will not be accused of overlooking any team to play the Commanders because they haven't won in Dallas in 8 years now. So that's a good thing for the Eagles, but I wouldn't say it's a great thing overall anytime a team has to play two division rivals so close, short turnaround, twice in a 5-day span. That's pretty rough. We'll see how the Eagles handle it. We'll talk about it more on Inside the Birds pregame live, myself, Adam, and Greg Cosell Sunday morning. The 4:05 game, Titans at Chargers. Call me when the Titans get a quarterback. I got nothing. I mean, the Titans are 7.5-point dogs, and they should be. They're 2-6. I don't see how they're going to score any points against the Chargers, who are 5-3. Herbert's been playing better. The Chargers defense is really the reason why the team is 5-3, but Herbert has been playing better. They're letting him throw more. When Quentin Johnson plays, they have a downfield element to their passing game that they lack when he doesn't play. McConkey is starting to catch the ball a little bit. I don't even think the Chargers have to be on their A game. This game has 23-3 or 24-6 written all over it. The Chargers have outscored their last two opponents 53-18. Of course, that's New Orleans and Cleveland, but nonetheless, it's not like the Titans are much better than those two teams that I just mentioned. Jets at Cardinals. Jets think they got some life because they beat the Houston Texans 21-13 last Thursday, and they get the extra rest. Okay, you're 3-6. Now go prove it. Go out west and beat the Cardinals. Are you better than the Cardinals? The Jets are 1-point underdogs. So that tells me the odd makers think that the Jets are, on a neutral field, a better team. You could argue that the Jets have more talent, a lot more talent than the Cardinals. And yet, the Jets are 3-6, and they invent ways to lose games until they finally pull one out against Houston. The Cardinals, meanwhile, have been good, and they are getting better. They're 5-4. They've won 3 straight. 2 of those 3 were late fourth quarter type comeback wins or rally wins, and then they just beat the snot out of the Bears last week. They ran for over 220 yards, and the thing was, Kyler Murray wasn't even a big part of their run game. So that's pretty impressive. They obviously make a trade to upgrade their defense. They get Baron Browning from the Broncos, Browning from Ohio State. Good linebacker. He can play inside. He can play outside. He can rush the passer. He can stop the run. He can do a lot of different things. A versatile type of player. And so that's a good move because the Cardinals really do need help defensively. That should help them in the pass rush. And them winning 3 games has not only put them right in the thick of it with the Rams, with the 49ers, Seahawks for the NFC West, which is anybody's to win right now. Not only put them in the thick of it, but they became buyers instead of sellers. So Budda Baker remains, everybody else remains, and the Cardinals have a chance here to really make a move if they can beat the Jets, win 4 in a row. Then they've got the bye week. Then you come out of the bye, Seattle, Minnesota, Seattle, New England. All right. Seattle's not great. You can beat Seattle. They can beat you, but you can beat them. Minnesota at Minnesota will be a tough game, but Patriots, then Panthers. There's opportunities here before they end the season with the Rams and 49ers. Opportunities here for the Cardinals to continue to build on what they've done. Trey McBride, really nice player. James Conner having a good year. Murray playing within himself. I don't trust the Cardinals a ton. They're the type of team that I think can lose this game to the Jets or lose to the Seahawks or lose to anybody by 15. And you think, well, that's the Cardinals being the Cardinals, but you got to give them credit. They started off the year doing that thing, lose, win, lose, lose, win, lose. And you think it's same old Cardinals, but they've put together some pretty good wins here, and beating the Jets would be a good win for them. Any win is good, but winning 4 in a row for this franchise would be really nice. And Marvin Harrison Jr. continuing to develop. All right, the Sunday night game, Lions at Texans. The Lions have just gone scorched earth on the NFL. I mean, they beat a good Packers team last week, which was an important win for them in that division. They beat them 24-14, and that was their worst offensive performance since week 3. 24 points is their worst offensive performance since week 3. There have been games this year where Jared Goff has had more touchdown passes than incompletions. That is hard to believe, folks. This Lions team, the only thing, if you were a Lions fan, or if you're just rooting for the Lions to finally end their, drought, their Super Bowl drought, I think the only thing you'd be worried about right now is, are they peaking too early? Right. But that's sort of an urban myth or a hypothetical. They have talent. There's no reason that they would just all of a sudden enter a downward slide. They obviously make the trade to get Zadarius Smith, which was the biggest no-brainer and a move that people saw coming weeks in advance. So the Lions are doing what they're doing, and right now looks like a Lions-Chiefs Super Bowl. I picked the Lions. I think I picked that Super Bowl I know I picked the Lions to go to the Super Bowl. I have to go back and look to see if I picked the Chiefs or some other team. But the Lions look really, really good. And not just good, they just play together. They have a great offensive line. Everything starts with their offensive line, which allows them to run the ball effectively. It allows them to hit the intermediary game with Laporta, with Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've been able to win games without Williams, who's on suspension. When he's there, they get a deep threat. They can run and throw with their run or catch with their running backs. They're just so balanced and they can pounce on you very quickly. And their offensive coordinator is looking like the next great head coaching candidate if he ever decides he wants to take a head coaching job. And now they face a Texans team that looks good record-wise at 6-3, but the Texans are not the same team that we saw at the end of last year. They have struggled offensively. All right, well, the last 3 weeks, they lost 24-22 to the Packers. Then they beat the Colts 23-20, and then they lose to the Jets 21-13. All right, they are struggling to protect CJ Stroud. The interior of their offensive line is banged up, is not playing well. Tunsil isn't playing great, and it is impacting the quarterback. He is starting to not play well. He's probably anticipating getting hit. He's probably anticipating getting pressured, and they just don't look good offensively. And they really need to get away. They need to figure it out because they're a very good team. And I get that they lost Diggs. That was a tough injury. And, Nico Collins will eventually come back, and that'll help them. And Tank Dell, the weeks go by coming off that injury last year. I think offensively they can figure some things out, but it has to start with their offensive line. And if it doesn't start this weekend, forget it. Because if they can't score points and keep up with the Lions, I could see them getting railroaded even at home. So we'll see what happens in that game. Monday night game, Dolphins at Rams. Tua comes back. The Finns start running the ball explosively again. They start scoring points again. But the bottom line is it remains the same. They lose, and they're 2-6. They lost 30-27 to the Bills, and it will take a miracle for them to get back into the wild card race, even as bad as the AFC is after the top 3 or 4 teams. Maybe if they can string a bunch of wins in a row, something happens good for them. Maybe the Dolphins can maybe get involved for that race, but they've got to go play at LA against a Rams team that has been 3 in a row, and when healthy is good. And then the Dolphins will have to face the Raiders, the Patriots, so winnable games, but then the Packers. That'll be tough. Jets, Texans, Niners. Man, there's a lot of losable games in there before they finish out with the Browns and Jets. So you can say, hey, if they get things going, if they get things figured out, they can beat the Raiders. They can beat the Patriots. They can beat the Jets. They can beat the Browns and then beat the Jets again. That's 5 wins. That would get them to 7 wins. I don't think that's going to do it, though. I don't think 7-10 is going to get them wild card. So they got to start pulling off some upsets, and that would have to start on Monday night against the Rams. But again, the Rams are 4-4. They're just like every team. They're in the NFC West. They're in it because they're in the NFC West, and nobody has run away with that division. The Rams have talent. They're healthy. Quarterback will play well when he has Kupp, when he has Nakua. The defense has its moments. It's coming along with their young defensive talent. It's not a great defense, but there are flashes of this defense playing well. And after this game, the Rams play the Patriots. So at 4-4 right now, 6-4 looks very realistic for the Rams. And if the Rams are 6-4, if they can beat the Dolphins, beat the Patriots, then you got Eagles Saints coming up. The Eagles game will be at home. Even if you lose 6-5, Saints, you can win that 7-5. There's a pathway here. They end their season against the Jets, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks. They do have to play the Bills and the 49ers as well. So there are some games they can lose, but I have a feeling those last 3 weeks of the season are going to be very vital for the Rams. Jets, Cardinals, Seahawks. Go 3-0, go 2-1. Probably goes a long way toward trying to win the NFC West. I did predict the Rams to win the NFC West going into the year. Didn't think they were going to have injuries at literally every single spot. But look, they fought through. You got to give them a lot of credit. 4-4. They should be able to take care of the Dolphins Monday night at home. All right, time for my three picks against the spread. I did not do a very good job last week. Again, now I'm down to 13 and 14 against the spread this season after I was on a little bit of a roll there from week 3 to week 7. Last week I lost on, I thought the Browns could cover against the Chargers. They didn't. I thought the Broncos would cover at the Ravens. I learned my lesson the hard way on that. I did win on the Bucks covering at Kansas City. The Bucks were getting 9. I said that they would cover. They did cover even in a loss, so I went 1 and 2. Here are my picks this week. You probably could guess based on the way I spoke about some of these games. I like the Bills even on the road against the Colts, even being 4-point favorites. I think they can win this game by a touchdown at least, if not more. So I would take the Bills to win and cover at the Colts. The Chargers versus the Titans. The Chargers are 7.5-point favorites at home against the Titans. That's a big number. But like I said, this game has, 23-3 or 24-6 written all over it. I just don't know how the Titans are going to score a whole lot of points with Mason Rudolph against that Chargers defense. So I like the Chargers, who are playing better offensively. And Minnesota at Jaguars, 4-point favorites. Mac Jones starting for Jaguars. Going to be tough. Brian Flores is going to come at him. I like how the Vikings have responded last week. And I think that you will see a better version of their offense against this Jaguars defense. So I like the Vikings to win and cover the 4 in Jacksonville. That's it. Talk to you next week. Enjoy your football watching.